Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. We are in store for another Vegas native episode. That is right. I'm here with Gary Thompson. He's the founder of the Law Office of Gary Thompson, practices various areas of law, including personal injury, traffic accidents, business interruption, and traffic tickets. And he is a UNLV graduate. Gary, thank you for coming on.
All right. Thank you for having me.
We're such a rare breed. You'll be episode 112.
Okay.
I've had maybe 30 Vegas natives.
That's a lot.
Yeah, right? That's what I like to call us unicorns. I don't know what it is, but the majority of people who come out here the majority of people who are making a difference in the city tend to be entrepreneurs who move out here and they find a lot of opportunity out here. It's strange, but I always enjoy talking with UNLV grads and especially Vegas natives because I feel like we grow up with a different mindset compared to the majority of the states.
Sure. I think it's, when you look at our industry, I've been approached at airports when I was visiting friends and family in Arkansas, and they're like, "You live in Vegas? People live in Vegas?" And I want to joke with them, like, "Yeah, I live at the Hilton, and mom's a showgirl, dad's a dealer, and we're on like the 5th floor." And I'm like, "No, there's actually a community there."
So what was it like growing up in Vegas? What was your experience like, and also going to UNLV in the early days?
Yeah, it was such a small town. My dad was a police officer in Henderson. My mom worked for the post office, and we had to live in, then police officers all had to live within the city limits of Henderson. So we moved in 1967. So I grew up in Henderson. My grandparents lived, behind the Boulevard Mall. It was just the Strip or downtown were always, that's not where we hung out. I mean, we're a community. We're not on those. Those were, when people came and visited, we're like, okay, we'll take you downtown and see this, or we'll take you on the Strip and do this show, but it's not something that we would frequent at all. So I don't know. It's all available there if you want the entertainment, but it wasn't top of mind. We're just going to school and working and growing up.
My parents moved out here, or my dad moved out here in 86, and he always talks about how like down by Boulder Highway area, there was just like nothing. That was like as far as it went. And he's like, that was our highway. And then you go out west, and I think he said like Jones was like as far as it went. It was just like, it was a very, very desolate area.
Top of Sahara, Rainbow and Sahara, 7-Eleven, you'd cross Rainbow and it's dirt road. And so you just gather up there. You can see a great view of the city. If you needed a beer, you stopped off at the 7-Eleven there and open up your doors, listen to the radio, and look at the city. So
how was your UNLV experience?
I love UNLV. It was I was a swimmer at Basic. I actually won state championship in '82, and I walked on to the UNLV. So I was a Division I swimmer. I got recruited to a couple different places in Division III schools. I wasn't, nationally, I was a big fish in this little pond, but overall, not that, it wasn't Division I competitive. So I walked on to UNLV and went to the hotel school here, which is really what hotel schools what drew me. But I swam for a year, and that's a lot of work. So Division I athlete, you're over 40 hours a week trainings, full-time job, 7 days a week, and had achieved some success, but I knew that I couldn't do both successfully. So went and just dropped swimming and went to school. And it was a great experience. Of course, the basketball team, I've been a fan since I was in our first Final Four team. We've had season tickets in the family, except for 2 years law school. And so, I graduated UNLV in 88. So 87, we were in the Final Four, and 90, we won the championship. In 91,
You're
we were
right
in the Final
there,
Four.
right there in the heyday.
So, big fan, and that was a big part of UNLV identity.
Did the UNLV community feel very alive, very spirited during that time?
Oh man, and bonded to that program. It was, when we won the championship in '90. I was working for the Tropicana, and they sent me to Laughlin to work at the at the other Tropicana property down there. And I got stuck watching the national championship in Laughlin with our general manager at that property. So I was like, this isn't really where I wanted to be. I would have probably been around the Thompson Mac somewhere, but that was fun. I mean, everyone was bonded around that.
Yeah, that's something that Vegas locals still love to bring up all the time.
Oh yeah,
the 90 championship.
And now we're 30 years past that with not a lot of success in between.
Yeah, there. If you see over in the corner, I have a big fat head of Dave Rice. Oh. I borrowed from the student union the student section of the Rebel game, his last coaching session.
Okay.
And that was the last time we made the tournament.
Yeah.
It's like 6 years ago. It was like one of my last years in college, but the UNLV games was extremely spirited. Student section's fun. Now, in today's world, the student section doesn't even fill up really.
Right.
It's unfortunate. And now with this migration to online education, I'm a little worried for campus life, not just at UNLV, but just in general. You won't see fraternities and different organizations and special interests on campus as much. That makes me a little concerned.
Yeah, my daughter is graduating at Colorado State, and her, this senior year and her junior year have been impacted by this. And yeah, it's a whole different experience for her, and Colorado State's a beautiful, and Fort Collins is what a wonderful college campus and experience. And that's totally changed with this. And we'll see how and if it comes back, what it'll be like.
So you mentioned that you went to UNLV and studied hotel administration, mm-hmm. But I presented you as the founder of the law office of Gary Thompson.
Yes.
What happened there?
As a hotel major, you have to take business law, hotel law, and I found a real niche and success taking a business law class. And the professor really got on me about applying to law school. At the time, I was losing my vision, and I didn't tell him. I just said, no, I'm not interested. And so it took a while for me to go through corneal transplants and get my vision back to where I could see and read. And when that happened, I actually invited that professor to lunch and said, okay, tell me more about law school. And that's where I ended up.
Yeah, it's a cool transition. What in business law, what aspect of it do you find fascinating? Obviously, I mentioned that you practice personal injury and traffic accidents, which traffic accidents doesn't really have to do with business law, but
right.
Maybe there was an opportunity at some point in your law career where you saw a necessity for that in Vegas.
So business law is a required class in the hotel. You had to take hotel law. You had to take business law. And really it's around the primary business law stuff is contracts. And so it was a general understanding of those concepts that was easily grasped by me. So when I ended up going to law school, I gravitated toward family law, which is really where I thought I would land coming back to Las Vegas. And I did practice 6 years of family law, but I take home all of my clients' issues, mostly all the issues around kids. And so I didn't sleep a lot for 6 years. And so I realized that although I'm a good family law practitioner, I think I get people through a really hard time with resolution, pretty good mediator. I couldn't leave it at the office, so I stopped doing that. My first job was with Glenn Lerner once I passed the bar, and so I was introduced to injury law. And then we also did at the time in 1995, it was budget legal, and we did everything: bankruptcy, family law, estate planning, criminal law, and injury. And so I got a good introduction to everything. And I was there just a short time and then opened my own practice April 1st, 1996.
Hey, yeah. 25 years. Congratulations.
25 years today.
Congratulations. You guys heard it here first. Why is personal injury so important and so popular? When you see a lot of the law advertisements or commercials, everyone is always poaching personal injury. Why is that?
There's lots of reasons for that. It's common. So every day, and especially in this community now of 2.5 million people, and we're moving around, we run into each other. And so there's probably over 100, 200 accidents a day. And that's just car accidents. And then you have everything else that goes with it. So there's a lot of opportunity here. There was a tremendous amount of money in it in the 80s and 90s. It was an easy practice, so a lot of people got into it. It's becoming more and more difficult and more complex over the years, but there's still a lot of money and there's still a lot of opportunity, and it's kind of driven. There's demand, but B, there's a lot of obstacles that the insurance companies have put up, and I think if they treated, I don't know if they treated people better. You wouldn't need an attorney, but they treat everybody like they're a fraud case, and so they put up so many obstacles that I ended up, a lot of people going, look, I've never been involved in an accident. I don't want to get rich. I don't want to hire one of you guys. I just want to get my medical bills covered, and then they get treated so poorly, I end up seeing them again. So, and it's I experienced this early on when I was working at the Tropicana. I was hit by a drunk driver. So I went through the process and all the obstacles even then in I think it was 1990, maybe 1989. And so from that personal experience and the ringer I got run through, there's a need right now for attorneys to represent people. And then there's so many a variety. You could, you see the big firms like Lerner's firm or Kuttner's firm. A lot of times those become mills that you never see an attorney. You deal with a paralegal, and that's just not how I wanted to practice. And that's why, I opened my own shop. So it's a much more personalized concierge. I get to know my clients. I check in on them on a regular basis. I'm usually calling them before they call me. And so just a different experience, different way to practice that area.
Personal anecdotes are very important to your mission or whatever business that you're running. When it comes to personal injury and clients, do you find it more as an individual coming after an individual, or is it more so individuals being injured on the job or on some sort of property and they're trying to come after the corporations? So
most of the time it's individuals, it's car accidents. I mean, that's 90% of what's out there in the market. And so, and generally you're not dealing with, if you get hit by somebody, you're not suing them, you're going after their insurance company. So and usually people don't have stuff to take. So,
that's true.
Most people they own a house, but they may own a house, but it's encumbered by a mortgage, and you can protect it with a homestead exemption. They have a job, but it may not pay much, and if you actually get a judgment against them, it's very difficult to garnish their wages. And people have more debt than savings. So suing individuals, that's not that's a long haul, a lot of work, and not a lot of reward at the end. And so usually it's insurance, and it's a lot of people. Not a lot of people. There is some uninsured motorists out there, so you have to rely on your insurance if you have underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage. So you want to make sure you have those just in case, because there's people that have come to me, clear liability. They've been hit by somebody that was at fault, clearly at fault, and that person is uninsured, and my client didn't have any insurance, so there's nothing to get, because one of the reasons they didn't have insurance is they couldn't afford it. So they clearly don't have anything to take, and there's no relief after that. So if you don't have your own underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, you're kind of taking a big risk out there.
Interesting. Yeah, That it is such an unfortunate situation when somebody's hit by a motorist and that motorist isn't insured. It's like you're just pretty much SOL at that point.
Yes. Yeah, there's no recourse. And even though they raised the minimum, you have to carry a $25,000, $50,000 policy. If you get hit, if you're in any kind of high impact and you end up in trauma, your bills are more than that. I mean, just activating trauma is more than $25,000. So, even if they have insurance and they're carrying minimums, it's usually not enough. So you really got to, again, protect yourself.
What would you say is probably the most equitable policy minimum to possess without just going crazy and saying $1 million? Like what would cover like the basis of a car accident?
I think a 100, 350,000 in property damage would be pretty good. And you'd probably have to add in some medical payment coverage between $5,000 and $10,000. Just because most health insurance policies have a deductible that's $3,000 to $10,000. So you want to have at least a fallback that you have some money available for medical because you have to take care of yourself before you get a settlement. They're not going to pay along the way. So you get hit, you're hurt, you can't work, you're going through all this treatment, and you have to pay for it. That really, when people have never experienced that, and then I tell them this is the way it's going to be, they're like, that doesn't seem fair. I'm the one that got hurt. I'm like, and that's our system. So you need to have these things in place. Health insurance is great, and coupled with medical payment coverage, so you can cover deductibles, so you can get through that time without coming out of pocket.
Yeah. And so we were talking about this before we started recording about traffic tickets and how you jumped on that kind of pretty early in the traffic space before we started seeing commercials of the pink, was it the pink ticket?
Yeah.
Pink tickets.
702 traffic.
It's 702 traffic. Yeah. How is managing traffic tickets? And I know there's a handful of various traffic courts in Las Vegas. Is that why a lawyer is needed for traffic cases? Because it can be quite confusing.
A couple things. Every municipality, our North Las Vegas, Henderson, and Boulder, all have their city courts, and each one of those have a traffic division. And then the county has a county court in each one of those jurisdictions. So you have Las Vegas Justice Court, Henderson Justice Court, North Las Vegas, and Boulder City. So just within this valley, you have 8 different traffic courts, and they all run their own. They make their own rules. So how you appear and what the fines are and your options are different between Las Vegas Justice Court and Las Vegas Muni Court. And it's hard to tell. I mean, most people think they're in Las Vegas, and let's say they're at Tropicana and Las Vegas Boulevard, and they're like, well, I'm in Vegas. I'm like, well, Vegas ends at Sahara, and south of Sahara is county. Really? Like, yeah, most of the strip isn't in Las Vegas. So I go, you're going to be in a county court, where if you were north of Sahara, then you're going to be in a city court. And the difference could be almost double the fine for the same charge. And Sahara, which is kind of funny, on the north side of Sahara is city and the south side of Sahara is county, a lot of parts of it. So I'm like, I was on Sahara. I go, which way were you going, east or west? Because this ticket in the city is going to be $400, and this ticket in the county is going to be $198. So yeah, there's confusion there. There's the inconvenience of having to appear, go downtown, park, take the day off, go in there, and then typically you're going to have to do a traffic school. And again, things have changed so much. I started this service 21 years ago today, April 1st, 2000. And a lot of things have changed. How you appear, your options to take traffic school have gotten easier. And so I've actually reduced my attorney's fees over time. A, there's competition. B, I can do, and the courts have made it harder and harder for the attorneys to get a different or better deal than the general public. It's pretty much all the same. So now I'm more of a convenience. So if you don't want to deal with the court, I'll deal with the court. I'll tell you what you have to do to pay your fine or do traffic school and things like that.
Yeah, traffic court is a pain. I've never had to get a lawyer, but I have had a few texting tickets before because I'm an idiot, and just dealing with it is a pain in the ass. It's definitely a little bit of a money grab for the courts and for the city, but I mean, what isn't at this point in society?
Yeah, that's true.
So what is the two other ones I want to practice areas I want to go over? One is business interruption. What is that?
So business interruption really is born out of COVID. And it's gonna come and go pretty quick here, although it's going to take a while to resolve. So businesses that were forced to shut down, and a year ago, every gaming machine in the state had to be shut down. So every tavern, every store, grocery store, 7-Eleven, every place that had even one machine, you had to turn it off. And most places had business policies in place that if they're, and part of that policy is if they get shut down, and this is where the fight's going to be based on how they got shut down, that their business losses would be covered. Most of the time it's like fire, flood, something that, you have a fire and you got to shut your business. They'll pay you what you would have made while they put you back into place. And so global pandemic, airborne, virus, they thought about it a little bit when I think swine flu, H1N1 came through. There were some exceptions written into there, but they didn't really follow through with it, either providing insurance that specifically you could buy to cover that, or specifically excluding it. So it's going to be a fight, and every policy is written a little bit different. But if you were forced to shut down, governor's orders, and you lost money during that time, and you had a policy in place, we're representing people on that.
That's smart.
Yeah, and we'll see how it works out. It may not work out, but we're not on a retainer. It's a contingency, just like personal injury. So if you don't get paid anything, you're not going to owe anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for the most part, it's you battling against the insurance agencies, because I know insurance companies are very particular in the way that they write these policies. And for example, there was a pizza place across from UNLV that was one of my favorites. It was called What's Up Pizza. It was across from UNLV, and they were kind of like below the street level, and they got wiped out because there was a flood. It was like once in 20 years that a flood has ever happened in that area, and they got wiped out, and they didn't have a flood insurance policy. And it's like, who would have a flood insurance policy in a desert? Like it doesn't make sense. So I guess the question is just like, how do you go about these situations when companies or individuals aren't insured in specific areas, even though it seems like it's like something that won't ever happen?
Yeah, and if it is, let's say you're in a flood zone, most of the time you're required to have flood insurance, and so but if you don't, you're just not going to be covered. If you're in a fire zone, all these houses that burned in California last year and the year before, it's really difficult now to get a fire policy living in those communities, because the risk hasn't gone away. It's actually probably increased. And so it's going to be a fight over language. It's going to be a fight over exclusions. Right now, the insurance companies are denying all of these. I think somewhere down the line, they're going to be covered under certain policies. I think some policies were written better than others. So we'll see how it works out. In the meantime, we're looking for clients to represent during this time, and if we can help them, ultimately we'll get there. And if we lose, we don't prevail on these issues, they're not going to be out anything. So when you're battling with
if when you're in a room and you're arguing over contract language, is the focal point basically arguing over ambiguous language in the contract? Is like, do insurance policies do that purposely so that it comes down to a debate between the lawyers and the insurance company to figure out what it actually means and if that person's covered?
I don't know that it's an intention to write it ambiguously. I really think the intention is to write it specifically to cover all known outcomes. However, most people didn't, although we should have seen this coming. I mean, there's been movies on it. And we knew that this was a possibility and we should have been better prepared. So should have the insurance companies kind of written these in, and they kind of did. Like I said, some policies are excluding, have specific exclusions for viruses, and some don't. So it's really, it's going to be argument over language and how it's interpreted. I mean, we have a whole section on statutory interpretation in law school, and it's where you put a comma. If you say, if you have a sentence, red truck and ladder, you're thinking it's a fire truck with a ladder on it. Well, is that a red ladder and just a red truck, or is it a red truck and a red ladder? Okay. And then you have to go to legislative intent and public policy and, what should it be? So it's, that's where the fights come, and that's where the attorneys will.
I bet these insurance companies are now evaluating all kinds of different situations. Comet comes, riots, I don't know, public grid wipeout. And more and more we're getting so dependent on internet and cloud-based. My entire law practice is cloud-based. If I can get internet access, I can practice anywhere in the world because everything is there. But you take out a switch location or Google location, and you take out the internet, a lot of businesses, most businesses can't function. Their telephones don't work. Their credit cards don't work. Their point of sale system doesn't work. And no one knows how to, or even has a machine to run a credit card. Yeah. Is there a chip or there a scan, and if none of that's working, and so that, I think that's more likely you're going to have losses occur in those areas, whether it's intentional hacking and stealing, or it's breakdown and loss of time and energy and money in those areas. And so, you have to adjust to the times. Yeah, so society's growing increasingly digital. You see the migration to remote working and digitization of assets. How has your business changed since the COVID pandemic outside of implementing business interpretation practice?
Yeah. So, really, I hadn't done definitely never done a Zoom call, or any video conferencing. Although it's been available for a long time, I just haven't needed it. I've done some, or am rarely, maybe a couple times over 20 years, appearing in a court telephonically. And that was a big deal. You had to apply, and they had to approve it, and then, they had to set it up. That seems so far away now that almost every court now, and almost immediately, adjusted to video appearances, out of necessity. It's like bang. And it's common. I mean, I have my own, whatever video conferencing account. To set up a meeting is like, okay, set up the meeting, send them an invite, gets put on the calendar, and then you log in that time and you're meeting someone face to face, and you're just not driving across town. And that is where a year ago I wouldn't have thought or even known. I know the technology exists, but I wouldn't have thought about using it. I'm like, where am I going to meet you for lunch, and how long is it going to take to get there, and where am I going to park? And now, this morning someone goes, hey, how about Monday at 10 o'clock? And I go in, set up the meeting, send them an invite. And that it's totally different. And so courts have adjusted. I have a 1 o'clock court appearance today in Justice Court down here, and it'll all be video. And so we haven't been live in the court for a while.
Has it, I guess, arguing a point over or through a computer screen may be tougher than having a conversation like we are having in person, because there's a lag, like you can't read body language as easy, so you don't know how to argue, because I know that's important in the courts as well. Mm-hmm. Do you find it easier? Do you find it easier or tougher to make a point through digital courts?
Right now, I think it's just more convenient right now, and I haven't seen a big difference in the things that I've been doing. Excuse me. If I was going through a full-blown civil trial or a divorce case, I think being there live would be much more important. Actually, all the things that you said, reading someone's body language, seeing how they react, where they look, and how they're doing, instead of trying to get all that through video, is going to be very difficult. And if you're doing a civil jury trial, you're going to be disconnected from a jury where normally you can watch exactly how they're reacting to what's going on in the courtroom.
Yeah. So some of these more arbitrary procedures, that's what it is, just more procedural. It's just going through the list, I guess you say, or the procedures of what has to get done.
Yeah. If we're doing, if it's just traffic court and we're doing 200 traffic tickets and the attorneys are coming in and it's just attorneys, it's very efficient. Even live, it's very efficient, and there's not much interaction with the judge. And those are even more efficient now, video. You still get to see the judge, which is really all you're reading, and they can see you. And so you cut out an hour or an hour and a half of drive, parking, security, elevators.
Yeah.
Cut all that out, and you just log in, do your thing. I hope that continues. I hope we have taken this now opportunity, saw what the possibilities are, and adjust to that and keep some of it, because some things are much more efficient.
Yeah, and you get to save on those downtown parking fees.
Downtown parking and time. I calculated it out. The amount of time that I saved in 2020 gave me another 2 weeks in the office, full 80 hours. And so, that made me more, I got more work done.
Yeah, and it gives you more time to pursue other things. And something else I wanted to talk with you. You and one of my previous guests, Jen T, are part of something called the Business Networking International Group. Can you give us an explanation of what that is and what kind of impact it's had on you?
Sure. It's a networking group, and it's there's many, there's a lot of different networking groups that have organized networking, where you essentially meet with a group that, and it's a captured group. So only one personal injury attorney is in the group, only one realtor is in the group, only one loan officer is in the group. And we meet every week to learn more about their businesses. They learn about your business, and basically you're building your sales force out there. So, Jen and I belong to Integrity Business Professionals, which is one of 15 B&I groups in town. And we meet every Wednesday morning. I was not this week. Last week I was a presenter. Every week we have 2 presenters. We have anywhere between 45 and 50 people in the group. And so generally you only get to present twice a year in a larger group. Most of the groups are around 15 to 20. So we just have a larger group that we've managed over time. And we just support each other. You basically have your sales force of 45 people out there that know, like, and trust you, and are out in the community, and they're dealing with their clients and business. And that's been my number one referral source of new business for 25 years.
Wow, that's very important. Networking groups are growing in increasingly popularity. I've tried to start a few networking groups over the past few years. It's tough to get them started, but the power of having a group of 20 to 50 people who know your business in and out, and the amount of people they come across to create a referral, it's profound. It can have a large impact.
And it's, it's so much more efficient in time and money to have to cultivate that group than it is to do a radio ad or television or billboard, Yellow Pages or Yellow Pages, or whatever social media or digital marketing that you're doing. And so it's just been a really good group, and they become family. So it's not just for your business, but if and you have successful entrepreneur business people in there. So now you have a resource. Not only are they looking for business, but you also don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you say, hey, I have an idea, I want to expand here. This has been my experience. So we have Dave Beeson, who owns the muffler shop. He's on like 39 years in business. And so downtown Henderson, if you have a question about downtown Henderson and understanding that whole area, before you have to wonder if it's like that, just go ask Dave. And he's there to support you, and you're there to support him. And it not only can it be in business, but it can be, stuff happens in life, and we're all there for each other.
Even with the increasing adoption of social media, the word of mouth marketing structure is still probably the most important, right? It's like when you're with a friend and your friend recommends a show on Netflix or Hulu, anything like that. Majority of the time, you're going to go check it out rather than sitting there and scrolling through Netflix to see something that you've heard before. It's just something that your friend suggests builds that trust. And that's something that Vegas is built on. It's built on trust, right? The name drop on the Las Vegas Strip is probably the most powerful tool you could possess in your arsenal in terms of wanting to get something. Yep.
And that's, I worked in the hotel industry for 5 years and grew up with it, around it. Executive chef for Del Webb, and Sahara Hotel, lived across the street. And so that, it definitely was who you knew if you wanted to get business done. And so it still is, I think if you take that recommendation from a friend before you read a review and go, am I going to watch this, not watch this? You can ask your friend some questions. You kind of know what you're both interested in. If they like it, you figure, well, you'll probably like it too. So I would be more like to try it, or a restaurant, movie. And I'd much rather know someone that knows an attorney a little bit about them in the area that I need them than trying to find one online or trying to find them out there through advertising.
Yeah, I think finding attorneys is probably one of the most important trusted referrals that you could come across. There's a few times in my life that I've needed an attorney, and I've gone out and asked in a few of my most trusted friend groups of like who they would recommend. And it's because you don't know. When it comes to having legal representation, it's real important to know who that person is and how they act and what their values are, and do they align with you, because everyone's values are aligned differently. And the only way to find out if somebody's values are aligned with you is to go to somebody that you trust and to see if that's similar.
Yeah, and I met with a friend last week who's anticipating going through a divorce, and I said, well, let's meet for lunch. Let's talk about what issues you have, and I'll match the attorney to you, and I'll tell you about each one. If you want this is what you're looking for. If you interact this way and you feel like this is what you want, then this is the person for you. And if so we went through a handful of attorneys, and I was able to explain their strengths and weaknesses, their personalities, and again, values, and how they operate in the world. And I said, here's your choice. Here are your choices. I would recommend these, 5. And he made his choices. And then I can call up the attorney and say, hey, I'm sending you, this is a good friend of mine, and it goes, not only the recommendation, but now they'll get treated like they know you because they know me.
Yeah, playing matchmaker is very rewarding when you see that the two people that you set up, whether it's a business, deal or a referral or I don't know, relationship or anything like that, to see that those two people matched cohesively and that the result ended up in a positive light. You feel very good about yourself, your well-being, but also your selection process. It's kind of like a confidence boost in a sense.
Yeah. And that's getting back to the BNI and our IBP. That's, you know, everyone in your chapter. And that is when you can provide somebody a service and someone that you trust and have used, and they do a good job, it adds to your credibility, you know. And so, and it does have a very positive, you know, you feel good about it. Like, hey, I took care of their problem by just setting them up with the right person. So.
How does, if somebody's listening and interested in BNI, how do you go about entering a group like this?
So there's a couple of websites. There's if you just Google like BNI, you'll find international. But if there is a BNI Las Vegas page that has links, you know, you can see each chapter and who belongs. You can read a little bit about it, and it has all the information you're going to need to either find a chapter and to learn more about business networking.
Yeah, these, like I said, these networking groups are tough to find. I mean, if you browse through Facebook groups, there's 4 million Las Vegas networking groups, but
Right.
it's really hard to know what the intentions are. Are people spamming in it? That's one of me. I definitely spam a lot of the Facebook groups for any of those people who are listening. But to find the quality is very, very important. How did you come across BNI?
I was introduced as soon as I passed the bar in '95. One of the guys that I actually we were both on the swim team, and we swam locally. He swam for a local high school. I did too. He was working in an insurance field, and he goes, "Hey, I belong to this group, and you're starting a new business. Why don't you come visit?" And so I did. And I really enjoyed that. It was a great way for me to develop my business and personal speaking skills. I mean, it was even as going through law school doesn't train you how to public speak. And then you're expected to make great presentations in front of judges and juries or selling clients. I mean, you have sales and you have negotiating, and you have being trying to influence people with your arguments. Law school teaches you how to think like a lawyer, and you have some classes, moot court, you do, but getting out there in the field. So BNI is another great way to learn how to public speak, because you're going to be a presenter in your group. It's a friendly group. They want to know more about you. They want to know more about your business. And when I started out, I was in a small chapter, so we were speaking, maybe every few months, and we had more time to speak because we had more time, in the meeting. So it made me a better public speaker. It made me be a better networker and getting to know people. I'm generally shy, and if I want to play it safe, if you won't find me in the middle of the party. It's kind of on the fringes with people that I know, and it forces that. And so I became a better public speaker. I became more comfortable interacting with people that I don't know. And so there was a lot of things that came along with it that was nice. But yeah, I was introduced by a friend, and then I met people in there that lifelong friends. Like, we've been fast friends ever since.
That's how I feel about the fraternity. It's the same exact way. But public speaking is kind of like a catch-22, and I kind of compare it to patience as well, where the only way to get better at it is to practice it. But how do you practice it if you don't know how to do it, right? But It just comes down to stepping out of your comfort zone. And you have to continually step out of your comfort zone to succeed. I tweeted this the other day. I said the cost of opportunity is comfortability, right? It's
good.
It's I like to tweet these idioms every once in a while. Makes me feel smart, I guess, in a sense. But growing up, if you stay reserved in your shell, and now in today's society, it's becoming increasingly easier to stay in your shell, right? You don't even have to leave your house anymore. You can have Amazon ship your food. You can work digitally. It's like you don't have to. So you have to find different ways to get out of that comfort bubble. And networking groups and public speaking is one of the best ways to put yourself out there. And then you just become increasingly curious on other ways to divert that direction of where you want to go.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely opened up as I active in a BNI group, and the friends that I met there took me into like the Henderson Chamber of Commerce.
I had Scott on here recently.
Yeah, and love Scott. And into their leadership program. Went through that, and that had a whole different connection to the community that I enjoy. And so it really brought me into areas that I get a lot of participating. I think the mask I was wearing today is a Bauer golf tournament. We raise money for a school-based health center at Basic High School. And a high school leadership program that was born out of the leadership program is some of the most rewarding time that I spend, and it really connects me into the community.
So I had Scott on here as the person who's operating the Henderson Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. How's your experience been as a business, a part of that?
So I came into the chamber through the leadership program. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't a Henderson Chamber member, but I was recommended to the leadership program through the Henderson Chamber by a mutual friend that's our insurance agent in our BNI group. So one of the things is to go to the leadership program, you have to join the chamber. So joined the chamber, went through the program, but that, again, connection to their leadership graduates, because it's an alumni-driven program. Now you have the people that are really making a difference in the community, not only in business, but in government and all the charitable work that they do, all in one spot. And so that's been a very tight connection for me in the chamber, which brought me into participating more in the chamber functions. So I'm looking forward to their breakfasts again and their mixers and fundraisers, because I really enjoy networking in that. And instead of being afraid of it now, it's very comfortable to be in that arena. So, and I serve on their foundation board, and I'm still active in their leadership program, working on the next leadership class.
Yeah, joining an even larger, I think Scott said they have about 1,700 different businesses that are a part of it. The main idea that I grasp from that is that it bridges you closer to the community. You get to be a part of these mm-hmm. leaders who, like you said, you're a part of the foundation. Did something like that exist as you were growing up out here? Did you feel like the community was as tight as it is now?
You know, it was my experience in the community as a born and raised and going to, the local schools. So I haven't, my office isn't that far from the elementary school that I went to. I drive by the junior high school that I went to, and I'm a mile and a half from Basic High School. So I'm still surrounded in that community. I'm very comfortable in that area. I felt like I was connected because I knew every police officer, and of course that was good and bad. 'Cause they all knew me, So it wasn't. I wasn't if they knew what I drove, and if I was breaking the law, they wouldn't necessarily pull me over. They'd just tell my dad, and that was worse. So I felt, being involved with the police officers and growing up in the town, very connected in. I did know. You get to know the judges. You get to know some city council and mayor just because you're in the government area with the police. But what I learned through in the chamber leadership program is that there's a lot more to that, and so that experience really tied me tighter in. Even though it's a much bigger community now, I feel closer to it. And I like giving the history. Today, the El Dorado Casino is reopening, rebranded as the Pass, and it's reopening. It was Boyd's first property in '61, and now it's still going to be a property back on Water Street. So Rainbow Club's reopened this year. It was a 67. Gold Mine Tavern down the street was 65. And so those have been there. It's just nice to see they're still there. And so part of my connection with Henderson and Las Vegas goes way back when we were a lot smaller, but it's continued, and it's why I want to be here in the future.
Yeah, they also just announced yesterday that the Huntridge Theater was just bought up, and it's being rebuilt, and then it's going to be run. I actually just had Derek Stonebarker. He runs Rebar. That's right down here. Okay. He's a partner on it as well. But it's cool to see Vegas likes to shine light on its history. I think it's because the tourists are so fascinated with the history of Las Vegas. I have a bunch of listeners who are actually tourists who like to feel included in the Vegas community because they're here 8, 9, 10 times a year. So they're basically secondary residents. It's beautiful because the Vegas community is growing at such a fast rate, right? We're number 2. We've been number 2 in new residents over the last few years across the country.
Wow.
And what used to be a retirement city is now just like a go-to destination to live. That's not just the Strip, but a full encompassing community that's beginning to thrive and build different structures to the city. That's not just tourism dependency.
It's been frustrating to watch a lot of our history go. I worked as a busboy at the Dunes and watched them blow that up. I worked at the Showboat as a lifeguard and watched them blow that up. And so I remember going to shows at the Desert Inn, the Aladdin, mm-hmm. And they implode all those, Hacienda. So it's nice to see them embrace some history and preserve it. I mean, just and again, it moves along to, they blew up the Dunes, but man, you got the Bellagio sitting there. That's a gorgeous property. I look at downtown Henderson. My office is directly across from the new lifeguard arena. I remember when they built the convention center there in 1982, we had a lot of graduation stuff there. We had a celebration for our state championship. But I saw what it looked like when it was the school sitting there, and it was K through 12. And so I've seen 3 different versions of the corner that's right across from my office. Of course, my office was a house, and now is a 3-story office building. And so it's fun to see the change. It's some sad that you lose the history. But again, I from my conference room, I'll give people a whole history of Water Street if they when they come and visit. So.
What would you say is the biggest change in just the overall ecosystem of Vegas from childhood to now?
Wow. I think there was a time when I was familiar with almost every neighborhood and area. Either a friend lived there or family. We went and saw something there, had experience in that part of town. Now I find that even driving down here today, how much has changed in the last year to downtown Las Vegas. And I had my office down here from 96 up through, I moved back to Henderson in 2018. So for over 20 years, I'm down here every day, and I'm watching the changes. It's not as much as drastic. They happen, but now in the last year, I come down, and this building wasn't here that you're in now. The building next door was a dirt lot, and it's framed up. I think the biggest thing is things change so fast, and there's so many communities and areas of town that I haven't been in. And even if you have, in a year, they've changed beyond recognition. So I think that's probably the biggest. Where I was familiar with different areas of town. Now it's a lot of them are unrecognizable.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of it. It's beautiful. It's also scary because what was such a tight knit community that ethos is still there, right? Vegas strong after October 1. It showed that the Vegas community is very strong, and they understand the power and the impact if we all band together. And share the same values and morale for the city. But now with new residents and remote workers who are coming in and buying all the houses up, the culture is changing a little bit.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we will. I do think there's going to be a boom of entrepreneurship over the next decade. And by the end of the decade, Vegas will have some tech hubs and some finance hubs and some other things that didn't exist, because a lot of the new residents are remote workers who are working for these tech companies, and they're still keeping the same pay. So they're still making, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000 a year. And they're going to want to do something with that extra time that they now have in a city that's pretty much an adult Disneyland, where as long as they don't give it back, you'll generally go build something else.
Yep. No, I think there is a lot of opportunity here, definitely in another decade, and it continues. I mean, we've had so many new people over a long period of time. We got hit hard with a few things when we're heavily gaming and tourist, when we're heavily building, and those two industries get hit. We got hit really hard. However, we recovered again, and we'll recover again. And it's a whole different look now. I mean, my house is worth more than it was at the boom before, and I don't see the collapse now. It's like I just see more building and people and demand coming in. So we'll see what happens.
I have one final question for you. What does Las Vegas mean to you?
Oh, it's home. So it's always been home. I love this community. And even though I spend most of my time in Henderson, it's still, where are you from? I'm from Vegas, and I'm local, went to all the schools. UNLV was a big part of that. I really enjoy living here.
The city is all interconnected.
Yep.
It's the same. Everyone shares the same values, and the people, the natives and all of the migrants out here all are very proud to represent Vegas, no matter where you are. Where do I send all of the listeners and viewers to learn more about you?
I have GaryThompsonLaw.com is my website. There's also, for specific on traffic, there's Thompson Traffic Lawyers out there, which is geared just for traffic tickets. And then I'm on, I have not a lot of social media, so you might find me on Facebook, you might not, but GaryThompsonLaw.com.
Yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn. Those are the two that I was able to find.
You did. Yeah, I saw you last night.
Perfect. Gary, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
I'm glad that I could have somebody like you in my network and can appreciate Vegas in the same Vegas native mindset that I've grown up with.
Very good. Thank you, Jake.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.